So yesterday I played Fallout 76's beta for roughly 4 hours. I streamed this whole thing. The full VOD is on YouTube. You can actually click in the little eye right now if you want to check it out. And more or less what I'm going to do in this video is actually give you some of my impressions, reactions from this beta. I'm kind of in a unique scenario compared to other people where this is the third time I've spent 3 to 4 hours in this game, but then also I'm going to show you some of the beta highlights. If you really don't care about my opinions on this and just want to see all of the coolest things I did during the beta, I'll have a little timestamp on screen right now so you could skip ahead. But either way, playing the beta itself, this was probably the most fun I had in any of my playthroughs of Fallout 76. The first time around was of course at the Greenbrier event. We got 3 hours there, and although that was a lot of fun, it was my first time playing the game, there were two things that really marked that version and made it maybe not the most enjoyable. First and foremost, the FPS issues. It's super apparent through all of the gameplay I uploaded. And even beyond that, it wasn't in my natural setting. You're in a room filled with a bunch of people, you only have 3 hours to play this game, and you want to try and get as much cool content as possible. There's a lot of pressure on you as a content creator. You knew likely hundreds of thousands of people would be watching whatever I created there, and I was using an Xbox controller for the first time in like 4 or 5 years or something like that. Either way, I still had fun there, but after that I actually played in the stress test. I didn't really talk about that much because it was NDA'd, but I did play for a good 2 to 3 hours. During the stress test, I actually had a lot of other stuff going on, so I couldn't play for the full 4 hours, and even during my playtime, I had to take a few breaks, so that had a lot of interruptions, but it still was pretty cool. But fortunately, this time with the beta, I really felt like I could just sit back, relax, and enjoy Fallout 76 while live streaming with all of you, and I feel like that made me enjoy it a bit more also. I took my time with things. I didn't feel pressured to rush and try and make the best of the time I had because I knew over the next couple of days I'll probably get to play this game again. And I gotta say, there's definitely been some considerable improvements to this game. There definitely was going from the Greenbrier build to the stress test, but even from the stress test to this present build, it seems like they really got the FPS issues almost totally resolved. Now it was reported that some people on Xbox One, like the standard version and even the S, were having some frame rate issues, but me playing on my Xbox One X, I didn't really have too many problems. Things ran pretty smooth and all around it was a good time. I discovered a ton of really cool and interesting locations, and all around I think there's going to be hours upon hours of fun to be had here. The way I played was basically for probably half of my playthrough, I teamed up with the viewer. He just kind of found me on my server and then I invited him to my group. And we didn't really do a ton of quests. We did a couple of quests, but mostly we just kind of explored, found some cool locations. That was a blast. I'm excited to actually get to do more of that, actually have 2 to 4 person co-op in a Fallout game, and it felt amazing. Being able to take down some of those harder enemies with your cooperative efforts and actually reviving each other when you got downed. All around, it was a blast playing with others in a Fallout game, but I don't think anyone was against that. I think a lot of us have been looking forward to something like that for years. And after a while, after my teammate had to go, playing by myself was probably scarier than any other Fallout game thus far. Now, Fallout 4 with the right mods can definitely be way scarier, and if you want to see a video on that, I actually have made one. But just walking through Fallout 76 at nighttime or in some of those swampy regions, I felt isolated and alone, and that's something that I don't think was captured nearly as well in a lot of these other Fallout games. It certainly immersed me in the post-apocalyptic experience, and it did make me kind of frightened in real life. I was way more on edge in that scenario than I was when playing with others, or in some of those more open and vibrant areas. All around, I think this game is going to be a ton of fun, but it's not without flaw, and I think a lot of the issues I took originally are just kind of being confirmed by this third playthrough. There were so many instances where I would go to a location, clear it out, and be like, that's it? There's not like a story here, there's not some kind of holotape or some notes I have to read. Certain locations certainly did have more to them, but take for example one, the crashed spaceship. I thought there'd be an interesting and cool backstory or something super enthralling to do, but walking all the way to that location, I found some cool equipment, which I'll show you guys in a second, but otherwise it was kind of mundane. It looked cool, but there really wasn't more to it. Now maybe there is a hidden layer that I need a quest to activate, but I'm just using this as an example. For several of these locations, it felt like there was almost nothing there. They seemed so hopeful from the outside, but after clearing through it and exploring, you didn't find any cool stories, you didn't find any any cool holotapes. You might have found some loot, taken down a few enemies, but then I found myself moving on to the next one. And that wasn't every place. There was actually Abby's bunker I found eventually, and there all of a sudden I got flooded with various different terminal entries, dialogue to listen to, and just a ton of content all at once. But again, just something that really stood out to me, and I think a lot of people watching noticed it also, is as I went from cool place to cool place, a lot of them just felt kind of lacking, like there should have been more content at that location. So all in all, I'm excited for this game. I'm definitely going to dump a lot of hours into it, but after going through the first 4 hours for the third time, I'm kind of concerned as to what the state of this is going to be after the honeymoon period wears off. After I go and explore all of those cool locations one time or 2 times and actually do PvP combat, deal with a lot of the social interactions, like a month down the road, where will this game stand? Will I still be eager to play it and actually explore? Or will I feel pretty done with it, like I had done everything? With Fallout 4, there was always modding to fall back on, as evident by most of the content on this channel. But with Fallout 76, we're reliant on the story, and based off what I've seen right now, I think it'll be a ton of fun the first time around, maybe even the second time around. But it just seems like a lot of these locations didn't have a lot going on there, and that is not something I liked. But either way, with that out of the way, I do want to move on to the highlights now, actually showing you some of the coolest stuff I did during my 4 hours. One of the first things I do want to show you is the weather. I think in the Greenbrier build, for whatever reason, the weather was disabled or just wasn't occurring. I personally think the weather in this game is really well done, whether it be a rainstorm or just some fog. I think this weather is on par or pretty close to some of the mods we had for Fallout 4, and a lot of those weather mods were supremely popular. It's one thing that really stood out to me as being a noticeable improvement from the past game, and I'm excited to see more of this. I hope we do get some more kind of violent weathers like rad storms. And I hope with those, they actually are scary. Like you're like, uh-oh, I gotta go get into shelter or place my camp down here to get into safety. With the theme of more and more survival elements in this game, that's something I would love to see. One other thing that was actually really cool, I think a lot of you guys will like, is finding the Flatwoods Monster. So this just happened at random. We were walking around and all of a sudden I was like, wait, that's the Flatwoods Monster. It then went invisible for quite a while, and something that I guess is kind of cool, but hopefully doesn't make it into the final game. It looks like a lot of these legendary monsters had a bug. I guess calling them a legendary monster isn't the right word. These like special enemies in the game wouldn't attack players. Apparently other people were reporting this with the Grafton monster or even with Mothman. I was pretty happy because A, I got a pretty awesome thumbnail, and B, I got a really good and up close look at the Flatwoods Monster, which I don't think anyone else has thus far. It seems like he's just a random encounter. There wasn't anything particularly special about him other than the fact that he was rare and looked quite unique. But I have to imagine there's going to be a detailed backstory as to why he's here, people theorizing about it, and maybe even more of him or just more elaboration on its presence. That was just a fancier way of saying the thing I just said, but whatever. That was cool and I definitely enjoyed it. Following that, something I really wanted to do was actually get to that crash space station. It was seen in the trailers, a ton of people were talking about it, and it didn't seem like there was a ton of great footage of anyone exploring that from any of the past events. Well, I made my way over there. It was actually fairly easy. There were some higher level enemies, but again, with 2 of us, we cleared it out pretty quickly. And honestly, it was a little lacking. I really wanted to know if this was called Defiance, because something we had seen from the notes was the Brotherhood saying Defiance has fallen. I actually found out what that means. We'll get into that in a second. But no, it's actually not called Defiance. It's called something totally different. I honestly forget the name right now. But more or less, you had to find this note that one scientist was reaching for. And funny enough, I didn't realize this at first, but it's actually the release date of Fallout 76, 11, 14, 18. I don't know if we're blind, but we finally realized where we have to input it. We found the door and we could not find a keypad anywhere. In fact, it was right there on the door. And after putting that in, you actually get to go in and get these 2 really awesome looking spacesuits. They're in general particularly good items because they do give you a ton of rad resistance, but just overall, I think they also look really cool, and some of the screenshots I got of these things are pretty awesome. I later on got to see those as load screens, and that actually felt pretty special. And although that was really cool, it kind of felt a little lackluster. That was like all that was going on here. The rest of the spaceship, I couldn't find any way to enter. We actually found another door, but could not figure out any way to get into it. Maybe there's a quest requirement to get in, or maybe it's going to be something with further DLC. But again, this is one of those examples where this seemed like a really cool and exciting location, and all we really did was find a spacesuit, which was fun. I definitely enjoyed it, but am I going to come back here and explore it again just to get another spacesuit? Probably not, unless I really want that spacesuit for some reason. Following that, a lot of people are saying they actually wanted me to find one of the vaults. Somebody actually had an image on the map of where that would be, and unfortunately I spent like 20 minutes in the wrong mountain range trying to figure out where this vault was. After realizing my mistake, I continued on to the next mountain range and found the vault. This vault's pretty interesting because it actually seems like it opened after 1 year. After reading the holotapes, that's what it said. Everyone went in on October 23rd, 2077 and came out on October 23rd, 2078. But when I approached it, it was sealed. There was a ton of wildlife. Apparently this was a religious vault. They had an excess of resources and seemingly visitors were actually allowed in at one point. This was another one though that was really it. I'm not sure if you'll ever actually be able to get into the vault. Based on Bethesda interviews, it seems like no, you won't be able to. And it looks like a cool spot. Maybe it's another instance of we'll get some future DLC here. But as of right now, it just kind of was a vault door that you could look at and there's a lot of flora, but otherwise not super exciting. But something that was actually really interesting was this place called Hunter's Shack. Super unassuming, but it had a ton of content. First and foremost, I found a nuke code. Apparently some people are actually able to launch a nuke in the beta, which is kind of scary, but also cool, I guess. 4 hours is not that long. But at this terminal was more or less somebody hunting down and trying to track all of the different cryptids in this game, that being those things I called legendary enemies before. And it actually gave you a quest where you had to go encounter and actually fight some of these different cryptids. This was pretty much the last thing I got to do during my playthrough, and what I met was a Wendigo, however you say it. And it was cool. It kicked my butt twice, and I couldn't actually progress the quest any further, seemingly, because I had to take this one down in particular. But it still was a lot of fun, and I hope to do more of this quest. It seemed like it was a daily quest, so I might not be able to, but hopefully I'll be able to reactivate it and get a new set of cryptids to find. And all around, just this area of the map, if you watch some of my gameplay, this was the spooky, scary part of the playthrough when I was alone. It was nighttime. It was dark, there were a ton of high-level enemies everywhere, and during this stage, Fallout 76 definitely became a pretty frightening game. But then last but not least, the thing I want to talk about last, because it's kind of a cliffhanger, there's one location I actually went to as part of the main quest. It's called Abby's Bunker. I got a marker for it early on, and then towards the end of my playthrough, I actually eventually went out and found it. Here, I discovered what Defiance actually was. Basically, Defiance has fallen is in reference to a vault. You have this girl Abby talking to you, exclaiming how the Brotherhood were here to actually fight off some of the Scorched, but unfortunately that's all I really know right now. I couldn't actually go to Defiance because I was just super tired. There's only 20 minutes left in the beta at this point, but without a doubt this is going to be the next thing I do. So if you want to subscribe and actually find out what Defiance is, and actually the top of the world building's also part of that quest, so I'm going to be doing that. That'll likely be the very first thing I do when I get back into this beta, which who knows when that is. But either way, those were all of the exciting things I did in the beta and my general impressions of it. I could have made this into 2 videos, but I feel like it was just kind of a good combo. Maybe not, maybe some of you guys hate this stuff. But anyways, we're just gonna wrap it up for this video. No psych fun fact today because I think this video is long enough, but as always, again, I thank you for watching and I hope to see you all next time. Later.